The White House has been clear that it fully plans to fight for the president's executive order in the appeals courts.
This is insanity. This is some left-wing cuckoo bird who happens to have a judgeship who is making a ruling that is insane.
Confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Judge Neil Gorsuch to begin Monday.
I will use every tool available, including the filibuster, to oppose him.
Once the American public sees Judge Gorsuch up there in the Senate testifying, they'll realize what a terrific nomination this is.
Republican leaders facing a make-or-break moment now ahead of next week's expected vote in the House on their Obamacare replacement plan.
President Trump deploying Vice President Pence to help gain more support for health care reform.
I assure the people of Florida, we're going to have an orderly transition that makes affordable, high-quality health insurance accessible for every American.
It's going to be so much better than Obamacare.
Trump made his living on making deals. This is a real test of that ability.
We had almost 200 bidders to build the wall. We have great pricing coming in. We have some great designs coming in. I think the wall's going to start very soon.
That's some breaking news. You hear about Villanova? They're out.
They're out.
Top seed gone. Don't tell Peter Goosey.
Fell yesterday.
Yes.
Right?
Big day.
Big day in college basketball. Beautiful morning here in New York City. Welcome into Fox and Friends on this Sunday morning.
It's still black. It's still pitch black outside.
You know, I'm just hopeful that because we have one day until spring. One day until spring.
Is that it?
Yes. And
Wow.
Sanders here again wearing a white seal like in honor of summer.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
I am over my cell phone withdrawal.
You are?
Yeah.
You're
How you
going to talk to us again today?
It was amazing. Sandra this morning was already on her phone. Like we were like, "Are you going to talk to us?
Are you a part of the show?"
But I learned.
We've got a jam-packed show for you this morning. In fact, we've got I don't know, you come into Fox and Friends studio sometimes and the most random stuff. We've got skee ball in the studio.
I cannot wait.
Huge skee ball fan.
Love it. Apparently we've got a world champion skee ball player coming in. I didn't know that was a thing, but I'm already a fan.
Also, are you any good at skee ball?
I fancy myself good, but I'm not.
I will accept any challenge against you guys.
Yeah, what do you get?
Tickets.
You get all those tickets?
Right, and then you buy like a little plastic frog.
It's so many of them and you get nothing.
Well, we've got a lot to get to
Can't wait
this
for that.
morning, including this, a Fox News alert again. Once again, third time now, White House on lockdown right now as the Secret Service questions a suspicious driver who claimed to have a car bomb.
That's right. So in the last week, there have been now, unfortunately, 3 scares at the White House. The most outrageous of which was the one a week ago that we're learning more about now, where the jumper jumped the fence and was roaming the lawn for 16 minutes.
And wiggled a doorknob going into the White House.
With a backpack. I mean, the more I thought about that, we reported on it a little bit yesterday.
Right.
Someone jumps the fence, loose for 16 minutes, jiggles a doorknob, has a backpack. The president is in the residence. What could have been in that backpack? And what could have happened? I mean, explosive devices in this day and age do not have to be large. It's
So
these
these
really,
are
really scary
some of the first images that we are seeing. Of course, this is the most recent incident of someone approaching the White House in a suspicious vehicle, saying that they had some sort of explosive device on board.
That's right.
Yeah, so these images here that Sandra's talking about, these are new overnight. With this car, that is the car right now that they're investigating. You can see investigators out there taking pictures of the vehicle outside of the White House.
That's 11 p.m. last night. That's exactly right. Suspicious vehicle. Man claims he's got a bomb in the vehicle. They arrest him. They search the car. That is about 12 hours after the middle of the day yesterday, when an individual tried to jump the bike rack on Pennsylvania Avenue, was detained almost immediately, was trying to deliver so-called a document to President Trump. So you add the vehicle at 11 last night, 1 o'clock yesterday, and the White House jumper a week ago. That's 3 in a week, which is really problematic.
Well, Dan Bongino, remember on our show last weekend, before all of these newest incidents had said, former Secret Service agent said, sadly, I cannot confirm, I can't say that the president is safe at the White House any longer. He said, the president at that building is not safe.
That was a prophetic, I mean, it was, at the time I remember hearing it thinking, that sounds a little over the top. But then in retrospect, when you realize what actually happened in all of these events, there's a climate of threatening, unfortunately, that
And we know
seeing.
that Congressman Jason Chaffetz is going to be holding a meeting this week. They're going to be discussing what they can do to further enhance the security at the White House. But for the time being, after this incident occurred last night at 11 p.m., Secret Service has increased their posture of readiness. That was according to a spokesperson from the Secret Service on this latest incident. So,
And we're going to have Dan Bongino on
Yes.
later on this hour to ask about what does that posture look like. You can do something with manpower, but you've got to do more with actual physical barriers. And then he talks about the culture, which we'll talk to him about this at the Secret Service, and whether or not they're really prepared to deal with this right now.
Well, yesterday we spoke to Congressman Sean Duffy out of Wisconsin,
Yes.
who said he thought that the president's sell of Obamacare in the early days was soft. But now you're seeing that full court press from the White House and Vice President Mike Pence out there promoting Obamacare replacement in Florida, as President Trump is about to also hit the trail too and try to crack the whip on some of these guys moving those House votes from a no to a yes. Freedom Caucus members perhaps see if he can do that. Here's President Trump on how he plans to do these negotiations.
Well, I think it's going to be never easy. You know, healthcare is a very complex subject. I've been saying that for a long time. Now people are agreeing with me. They understand. And not complex for the ordinary reason, Jesse. It's complex because you take this group and you make them happy and they become unhappy. Now you make them happy and they become, so it's back and forth. The answer is yes, we're going to get something done. I think it's going to be terrific. And it's going to be so much better than Obamacare, which really doesn't exist because if you allow it to exist for another year, it's going to implode. But if I put together a perfect Democrat bill on health care or anything else for them to sign, you wouldn't get one vote. It's a pretty bad deal.
Well, that's a great point he made in a sort of a wide-ranging interview last night on Watters World. But Vice President Pence was in last night in Florida talking to a Club for Growth meeting. So Club for Growth, a very conservative organization, they have a gathering at Palm Beach, initially came out against the bill, as did so many Freedom Caucus members. You add in the ability for Mike Pence to talk to a group like that. He was endorsed by the meeting that he had with the Republican study committee President Trump had at the White House this past week. Right. Turns out 2 Freedom Caucus members now have decided to switch to a yes vote. I mean, if Vice President Pence can work on the Club for Growth, and the president can work on Freedom Caucus members, according to Steve Scalise, 2 Freedom Caucus members now support the bill, based on some tweaks that have been made, some small tweaks. Apparently, block grants to Medicaid was the big issue. You can see a vote that comes out this week in favor of the Republicans.
And by the way, that interview happening on Watters World last night with Jesse Watters. How did you sleep last night?
You know, I slept like a baby. I slept like a baby.
Surprising because you have a baby at home.
That's true. What about you? How'd you sleep last night?
Well, you know, I slept okay, but apparently some people are having a problem sleeping. Sleepless in Seattle. We're following this story where there's Donald Trump-induced insomnia as a result of some of those blue states that did lose to Donald Trump. People can't sleep.
Yeah, they're going to doctors telling them that they are having trouble sleeping because Donald Trump is in the White House.
Trump-induced anxiety, so they can't sleep. It's an article in Yahoo News. It almost reads like an article from The Onion. Right. I could barely. I had to check it and make sure it wasn't fake news.
But apparently it's a real thing.
They quoted poets and journalists and canine rescue workers and publicists and screenwriters and others. Here's a couple of the big ones.
Well, here's what the anxiety disorder looks like. It looms largest in the dead of night, say dozens across the country who describe their pillow-punching wakefulness and fraught sleep.
Wow. Lee Grover, a Chicago writer, has spent more than one night calculating where in her home she could build fake walls behind which to hide immigrants facing deportation.
Yeah, and this one really stuck out to me when we were looking at the story. This is what's this?
Deborah Skolnick.
She says, spending time, I can barely read it. She's spending time with plants in her garden. They're very soothing, and they help me remember that most living things on the planet don't even know Trump exists.
Wow. Well, so thank you for sharing what keeps you up at night. What keeps our viewers up at night?
I got to read one more. This is story time. One more. Susan Greenberg said, I dreamt I was at dinner. Someone accused me of leaving the memory door open and that was illegal. I shouted at them. I didn't even know what the memory door was. Somehow, I think the dream was about Trump. Then Allison says she gained the Trump 15.
Oh.
What is keeping you up at night? Are you like these folks? Are you having trouble sleeping at night? We'd love to hear your nightmares, your fears, your darkest desires. Let us know. FF Weekend on Twitter. You can reach out to us this morning.
Or are you like me, sleeping like a baby? Well, finally a watchman on the wall.
It's no wonder Yahoo's in trouble.
All right. All right, let's get to your headlines this morning. We begin with a Fox News alert. A Louisiana sheriff's deputy shot and killed in the line of duty overnight. This sobering image of fellow Baton Rouge officers saluting at the scene. Authorities say the unnamed deputy exchanged fire with a suspect during an investigation at a barber shop. The gunman also hospitalized with injuries. His condition has not been released. And we're just learning North Korea successfully testing a new rocket engine as Rex Tillerson was wrapping up his first trip to Asia. The move comes on the heels of a stern warning from the Secretary of State.
The policy of strategic patience has ended. If they elevate the threat of their weapons program to a level that we believe requires action, that option is on the table.
Tillerson is heading home to D.C. this morning. His Asian tour included trips to China, Japan, and South Korea to address North Korea's escalating nuclear threat. And just hours ago, Hawaii responding to a Department of Justice request to have a federal judge loosen his restrictions on the president's latest travel executive order. The state calling the request substantively lacking and procedurally improper, claiming that no circumstances have changed to warrant such a request. No word on when the judge will rule on that DOJ request. And this morning, the world is mourning the father of rock and roll. The one, the only Chuck Berry has passed away. Berry rising to fame in the 1950s, unleashing a string of hits shaping popular music for decades to come. Police finding Berry unresponsive in his Missouri home Saturday. No word yet on the cause of death. Tributes now pouring in from the legendary bands his music has inspired over the years. The Beatles' Ringo Starr tweeting, "Rest in peace and peace and love, Chuck Berry, Mr. Rock and Roll Music." And Bruce Springsteen tweeting this: "This is a tremendous loss of a giant for the ages." Chuck Berry was 90 years old. And those are your headlines this morning.
One of the first songs the Beatles ever played live in concert was "Roll Over Beethoven." Live, like the Beatles and the amount of reverence that they had for Chuck Berry, amazing.
Certainly a legend. And of course, I know it from my generation as you do from Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, yeah, right, doing the duck walk.
Awesome.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox.
Spanning many generations. All right, coming up, a terror attack in France, and the attacker screams, "I am here to die for Allah," before being shot dead. So did the media ignore this big story that happened yesterday? We'll discuss that next.
Plus, their support of President Trump is costing them the business they started from scratch. This hour, meet two real Americans who are being bullied for their patriotism and pride.
There they are. We're going to talk to them shortly. And oh, the agony of March Madness. Meet the newest star of the NCAA tournament.
Oh, I saw this.
I saw him.
Goodbye, crying flute girl. Hello, emotional young fan going viral this morning.
I love it too.
Remember crying flute girl?
Oh.
A Fox News alert: French authorities learning more about the airport attacker who held a gun to a soldier's head while screaming that he wanted to die for Allah before being shot dead.
The 39-year-old radicalized Muslim was known to authorities. His home was one of many searched after the deadly Paris attacks in 2015. Here to weigh in, physician and author in The Land of Invisible Women, Dr. Kanta Ahmed. Doctor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. Good morning.
So what do we know so far about what happened there?
The individual was a French citizen. He was Muslim of Tunisian origin. He had a lengthy criminal history, including armed robbery and also drug trafficking from my reading. And this was a determined person. He sped on his way to his mission. He was pulled over for speeding, shot the police officer, injured her, went on to carjack another vehicle, and within 16 minutes of arriving at the airport had actually already held at gunpoint a French soldier and attempted to take away her very powerful automatic weapon.
So, Doctor, we've heard a little bit about the words that he said. You know, I am here to die for Allah. There will be deaths. Tell us what you know about the ideological motives of this shooter and what it might tell you about the context and the environment there in France right now.
Great question. It's very hard to discount this as a frank Islamist attack. This is the ideology that Islamists use. I think it's significant that he appears to have had somewhat of a ramshackle plan. He tried to grab the gun of the French soldier. I heard as I was driving in here that there was kerosene and a lighter found in his backpack. I haven't been able to verify that yet. This sounds like an individual who was acting with some individual intent, maybe an ISIS-inspired rather than ISIS-directed, but definitely he's following the path of the behavior of most terrorists from radical Islam. That's what it seems like.
And Doctor, when you look back at the terror attacks that France has seen over just the last 2 years, the shooting at the Louvre, the Nice terror attack, the Paris terror attack, Charlie Hebdo, the list is getting lengthy here. There was a lot of warning signs with this particular individual. How is France and the officials there, how are they going to change their way about going about protecting from these types of attacks, especially after this one?
I think it's important to say that the French authorities did an incredible job apprehending him within minutes. In precious seconds, lives can be saved. We knew when we had an attack like this, public areas in airports are becoming increasingly lethal for passengers because screening cannot be performed there. So we know within 80 seconds in Fort Lauderdale, 5 lives were lost, 6 very seriously injured, dozens hurt in the panic. So they saved a lot of lives. But I think they're going to need to engage more human intelligence, more plainclothes policemen inside airports. We knew this person was back and forth with the authorities. There's radicalization going on in French prisons as well. So multi-pronged approach. But it's something that the authorities alone cannot do. Citizens have to get involved. He also texted family members on the way during this attack, "I screwed up, I shot a policeman." That tells us that there was a community around this operative who had some knowledge of his actions, and that's where we need to examine and hopefully intervene.
He lived with those family members as well.
No, you answered the question I was going to ask, so it's a perfect answer. Ultimately, the community itself has to be policing this activity as well.
And Peter, one thing that we have to say is, you're mentioning in the last 2 years, since the attack on the Toulouse school in France, which cost 7 lives, 3 of them children at the Jewish school, there has been unprecedented Islamist insurgency in France.
All right.
Unfortunately.
Doctor, thanks for joining us this morning.
Doctor.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, it's no secret how President Trump feels about Elizabeth Warren.
Pocahontas would not be proud of her as her representative, believe me.
Here's what he told Jesse Waters about possibly facing her in 2020.
Plus, their support of President Trump is costing them the business. They started from scratch. Up next, we will meet 2 real live Americans who are being bullied for their patriotism and their pride.
It looks good, beautiful from the U.S. side, and is difficult to climb or cut through. Proposals are due to the government by March 29th. And FBI Director James Comey set to testify before the House Intelligence Committee tomorrow. He's expected to answer questions on Russian interference or potential Russian interference in the 2016 election, as well as President Trump's wiretap claims. And also tomorrow, the confirmation hearing for Supreme Court over the nomination. Clayton?
Thanks, Pete. Well, the so-called tolerant left is costing 2 Chicago residents their music store, all because they support President Donald Trump. We have owner Suzanne Monk and Alexander Duvel. They have been receiving threats from Chicago residents over their store, and now they're being forced to shut down their store. Suzanne and Alexander join me now. Nice to see you both this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Suzanne, how do these threats start?
Well, I attended the rally at the UIC Pavilion that got shut down, and while my husband was discussing that online, we actually drew some attention from the left, and they outed us at that point as Trump supporters, and since that point, we have been receiving online threats, ratings wars, just called every name in the book, online, YouTube harassment. And recently what we've found is that they're actually even talking to other musicians and threatening people who would do business with us who didn't even vote for Trump. So it's kind of a tragic situation.
So, Alexander, the store, you guys sell musical instruments that you gather up around the world. What's happening to your store now in April?
We're going to close down the retail operation, and I do a lot of really amazing repair work on a lot of exotic instruments. I plan on very much continuing all of that wonderful part of what we do to serve our community. We have every intention of doing as much as we can to continue all of that kind of process. I teach. I definitely am a very sincere performer of live music, ethnic musical instrument specializing in.
Would you guys hear, would people come into the store and say things to you?
Yes is the answer. Friends of mine, sometimes some very long-term friends, took the time to come in and say one thing or another. If one guy might be very in support but needing to be very quiet, others really made me feel very much like I was just becoming more of a liability to them because they couldn't associate or recommend my shop to do business simply because of their peer group being so seriously anti-Trump that even associating with me was going to be a problem. So it made me think very seriously about being so public and having such a really
beautiful shop,
beautiful little brick and mortar shop to create a space for people.
Suzanne, you mentioned at the very beginning that this all started on Facebook when you went to that event and you started to see these threats coming in on Facebook. Were you surprised by the response of your friends?
I was surprised. Well, it started out with a lot of strangers and people I didn't know, but as it has gone on, it is surprising to see people that Alex has performed music with, people that we've known, I've had in my home, turn around and decide we're white supremacists, we're xenophobes, not out of any evidence. The only evidence they have is that we voted for Donald Trump.
So the store is going to move online right now. You're being forced to close down in the heart of the tolerant left's liberal city, Chicago. You've set up a GoFundMe page, and Fox and Friends is going to link to that. It's called GoFundMe.com/MusicStoreRescue. If anyone wants to help kickstart your business again, because as you say, you've poured your entire life savings into this business. We're sorry to hear that this had to happen to you. We're going to link it up on FoxandFriends.com.
Right.
There's the GoFundMe page at the bottom of the screen if anyone wants to help. Sorry to hear that this happened to you, Alexander and Suzanne. Thanks for waking up early with us. We appreciate it.
Clayton, we appreciate you having us. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks so much. All right, coming up here on the show, a Fox News alert, another security scare at the White House. A driver who claimed to have a car bomb stopped by the Secret Service. Former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino says the president is no longer safe there, and he's going to join us live next. And a nail salon under fire for charging overweight customers more for pedicures. Can you really do that? Danny just got fired a week ago, but does U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara already have a new job lined up? I want to change by the Well, you're looking live right now. I'm sorry, this is new video we just got into our newsroom overnight. This happened at the White House. That is a car. Inside, allegedly, was a explosive device. The man pulls up, says he's got a bomb inside the car. Police swoop in, arrest him, and then are now going through that car to find out if there is, in fact, explosive.
And the driver is in custody and being questioned at this time. We don't have any other details. He has not been released yet, but that was a Secret Service checkpoint at the White House that car pulled up, and he said, I have an explosive device on board, at which time they immediately deemed this
Of course, deemed it a suspicious vehicle, and that comes just a couple of hours or 10 hours after there was another individual who attempted to jump a bike rack over and to get in to deliver a document.
We want to bring in former Secret Service agent under Presidents George W. Bush and Obama and the host of the Renegade Republican podcast, Dan Bongino. Dan, you made some headlines last week when you were on our show when you said you don't believe that the president is safe at the White House. I guess this adds further tinder on your fire.
Yeah, you know, ironically, the security plan seems to have worked pretty well the last few days. They had the fence jumper who made it over the bike racket and this bomb threat this morning. But, you know, it reminds me of a story when I was doing an in-town movement as a Secret Service agent in the transportation section. A D.C. Metro cop had said to me one time, he goes, you know, you always want to be the guy in the security plan the day after there's an attack on the White House, because that's when you get all the assets. So the hope is that after the fence jumping incident where the guy made it onto the grounds, they made some changes, and it looks like they have. They made some good modifications.
But Dan, clearly the White House is seen as a magnet, an international magnet, a target by those who want to do harm to this country. When you say that things need to change and that the president's not safe and secure in that White House, what does Secret Service need to do to step up their game?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Sandra, because you would think the feedback when you say something like that from agents would be like, hey, Dan, you know, dial it down a little bit. But, Sandra, that's not what happened. I have multiple texts and emails and Facebook messages from agent friends of mine still working saying, hey, thank God you brought that up. You know, there are some serious modifications that need to be made at the White House. It wasn't safe. It wasn't intended to be hyperbolic. It was intended as a warning to the president and his staff that it's time to put some pressure on upper-level Secret Service management to start to listen to their personnel, listen to their agents, listen to their uniform division officers, and figure out where the holes are in the plan. Their management is too sclerotic. They're stuck back 20 years ago doing the same things they did yesterday, and that's why you had an incident like that successful fence jumper last week.
Dan, on the other side of that, speak to the culture in our country right now that's contributing to the White House being such a magnet, to people attempting to jump the fence, threats to our president. It all sort of feels like it's adding up, and just give us a sense of if that contributes to the vulnerability.
Yeah, you have a few things. It's this like witch's brew right now in the Trump presidency of threats to the White House, which is a magnet. That's an appropriate term. You have the evolving terror threat right now. You have terrorists that figured out a long time ago they don't need a 9/11 style attack. You get 10, 20 guys with AK-47s, you can cause a lot of damage. These soft target attacks. You have this hyper-partisan political environment with this just rabid far-left portion of the Democratic Party that sees Trump as some unique threat to the Republic. And then you have the threat that's just always there of people with psychological problems who, you know, see the White House as the, you know, the source of whatever, the beams that are headed into their heads and causing them to do things. I mean, literally, we hear that all the time. So those three things contribute to a really dangerous environment for the White House and President Trump.
You mentioned you were hearing messages from your active Secret Service members. What specifically? Were they giving you specifics where they need to fix things?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, they've known for years that the fence is inadequate, and the fixes are just, they're basic. These are just triaging problems. I mean, anti-climb features, I mean, clearly that didn't work on the Treasury side. What they need is an entire remodeling of the security plan. They don't need to make it an armed camp. They don't need a 22-foot concrete wall, but double fencing, an increase in special weapons personnel on the north and south lawn, an increase in the Presidential Protection Division manpower, some basic structural payment. The Secret Service has a pay cap that really no one else has given the hours they work, and it's causing a massive brain drain. They just don't have any good people left. They're all leaving.
And as you said last week, Dan, you said just a few additional people in personnel, visible, doesn't turn it into an armed camp. You can make these slight modifications.
All right, Dan, we've got to leave it there.
Yeah, not at all.
All right, Dan Bongino, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
You got it. Happy to be here.
All right, let's get to your headlines this morning. A manhunt intensifying for a teen possibly abducted by her former teacher who could be armed. 15-year-old Elizabeth Thomas is believed to be in imminent danger and has been missing now for a week. 50-year-old Tad Cummins is accused of kidnapping her. He was recently fired from the school in Columbia, Tennessee, after trying to have an inappropriate relationship with Elizabeth. Authorities getting hundreds of tips about this case, but admit that they still have no idea where she is. All right, President Trump not shying away about his feelings about possibly facing Elizabeth Warren in 2020.
I think she'd lose so badly. Pocahontas would not be proud of her as her representative, believe me.
I think she's probably going to run against you, Elizabeth Warren.
I hope so. What do I hope so? That would be a dream come true.
Warren campaigned hard for Hillary Clinton last year, earning her the nickname Pocahontas from President Trump. An outrage over a salon